So I'm now going to go through a series of things which I see as being very clear-cut ways in which we're being sidetracked, we're stumbling, or actively being manipulated by the words we use, the language we use, the expectations we now think we should have about ourselves, about our place in the culture. So I consider myself to be a phytotherapy clinician. It's my background, it's my training. I was trained in physical diagnosis in England. Herbalists in England can do physical we're trained in it and we can do it. Over here, without a license, doing physical or doing diagnosis at all that's the definition of practicing medicine without a license. So my background, even though I'm not a naturopath, I'm a sort of herbal English equivalent of it. Lots of people, when they read my books, think that I'm really scientific and go that way. I'm a recovering scientist. I love that stuff. But it's no better than any other stuff. It's one language. So I totally appreciate the science. That just enables me to be a tree hugger with a bit more consciousness. So I'm definitely not wanting to reject science here, reject rationality, reject logic, but I do want to reject easy conclusions and being culturally comfortable. I would strongly suggest that if we really find ourselves comfortable in this culture the way it is now, we've really messed up. If anybody tells me that they don't get depressed in 2005, they're in denial. If there is no depression in your energy field when you face the realities of what's going on in our world on all levels, you've been manipulated out of your humanity, because the only reasonable response to what is happening is initially one of, oh shit. What you then do after that, leads in all sorts of different directions. So we're going to need critical thinking. We're going to need evidence. We're going to need the highest standards of clinical training that we're able to acquire as North American herbalists. But that doesn't mean we have to then become the herbal triage station for the local capitalist conveyor belt. If we're really into holistic healing, where we're trying to work with the whole rather than the symptom pictures. There's a joke in that, but I'll leave it all. Is it appropriate for us, if we have patients coming to us who've got illnesses which relate to their work or relate to industrial disease, and we can put it right, but then they go straight back to work, which in this culture, that's what happens. Is that holistic healing? And I really question whether we even need to think we should be doing that. We can create the way we practice the way we want to. For me, that means being actively hardcore, politically radical, consciously with everything that I do. And let me give you the World Health Organization definition of health as a justification for being politically radical. Let's see if I can remember it. It's two sentences. Health is more than the absence of illness. It's an active state of physical, emotional, mental, and social well-being. Now they came up with this, what was it, 47 or 49, a long time ago now. I suspect if they were doing it today, they'd add environmental well-being. And I personally would want to add spiritual well-being, but don't ask me what I mean by that. Some acknowledgement there's more going on. So if your neighborhood has suffering people in it, if there are homeless people, if The city infrastructure is actually on the verge of breaking down and the sewers are about to go, or there's a hurricane coming, or the National Guard get carried away and they're coming, whatever. What should we be doing therapeutically there? I can't treat the symptoms anymore. I can't treat people unless they're willing to actually acknowledge that they're part of something more. And it took me years to reach a point where I could give myself permission as a clinician to say to somebody, no, I can't do this. I mean, you might share the same thought. If we put ourselves out there as therapy healer people, then we're there for people, non-judgmentally. And I tried to practice that way for years until a member of an organization called the Welsh Republican Army came to my practice. There were only 12 members. You've all heard of the IRA, the Welsh, maybe it's the lack of Guinness. They would have been better with some Guinness. Their main issue was trying to stop the English buying second homes for holiday homes because there weren't enough homes for the Welsh. And one of these 12 people actually came to me as a patient, and within 5 minutes, every button I had was pressed. This man was a bigot, he was a racist, he was a fascist. His only saving grace was that he was Welsh. And I was going through this whole trauma. I wanted to get physically violent with him, but as a committed pacifist, I wasn't going to allow myself to do that. But I had to actually say, please go. And it took me through some major changes. I've now embraced that enough that I can say, please go to most people, because I don't think most people are going to embrace the holistic insight. And I've reached a point in my life where I don't really want to mess around anymore, because I don't think we've got much time left. So I choose not to treat yuppie diseases. I choose not to treat things which, in the treating of them, is going to strengthen me-ness. Not meanness, me-ness. I also choose not to charge people money anymore, and which in this country makes no sense whatsoever. But then again, if you can make sense in this culture, something's wrong. So, from that perspective, let's look at some of the assumptions that we have to challenge. Let's think of some of the words, just really basic stuff. You've all heard the expression, the plant kingdom. I find that profoundly offensive. I come from a kingdom. I escaped from a kingdom. And I can assure you that plants are not imperialist, jackbooted invaders that are going to conquer you for their king. Now, it may seem like just this sort of word game, but I'm really of the opinion that the words we use create the energy around us. So I reject kingdom, but all right, if you want to play that game, you could almost call plants the queendom, animals the kingdom, but then I think of Queen Victoria, and I reject that one as well. So the word that I've been using, it doesn't roll off the tongue very well, but it says something. Kindom, familyness, Kindom. Think of some other ones. Eastern herbs and Western herbs. Familiar with that? Everywhere is west from here. The fact that the period of Western colonization saw the world as a series of places which were related to, the Greenwich Mean Standard Time latitude, and now it's going to be related to Washington. That's their delusion. The only thing that makes a herb a Chinese herb is not that it comes from China. It's an interpretation of the properties of that herb within the context of five-element theory. And if you can interpret English chickweed in five-element theory, you can use it in Chinese medicine. From my perspective, if I can interpret Schisandra berries in terms of the phytochemistry and the physiological response to that phytochemistry in Western terms, I can use Schisandra berries as a Western herb. The difference is my conceptual relationship with it. Ginseng is a male herb. Dong Quai is a female herb. Is that still going around? All right, I'll leave that one, because it's not what the Chinese say at all. There is a strong energy of intellectual imperialism in the herb world. And it's just a microcosm of the Western way of raping everything that it comes in contact with. But as herbalists, we've really got to be more humble. When you come across herbs or things being written by people from Ghana, they may not have traditional Chinese medicine, they may not have Ayurveda, they may not have, the medical systems which have got a propaganda arm behind them, but they have their own system. And the guideline I used whenever I come across a herb that's new to me, because it wasn't part of my tradition, is not immediately try and ram it into my tradition. It's to spend some time trying to get an appreciation of that culture's tradition, because the insights about the herb, the insights about that unique form of viriditas are going to be uniquely in their tradition, not my intellectual deconstruction of their tradition. Which leads quite rapidly to the conclusion that you're not really going to be having herbal experts. There are herbal, very knowledgeable, very wise people. But anybody who suggests that they're a herbal expert is actually saying the absolute opposite, because they've missed the point entirely. Some of us know a lot. Doesn't make us experts. It usually implies some form of mental constipation, because, well, I'll leave that one. So, three areas that I'm really concerned about at the moment: the commodification of herbalism, the co-option of herbalists and herbal concepts and insights, and then a sort of lunge to compromise between different belief systems. So the commodification. Let me just talk about drugs for a moment. And by the way, the word drug derives from a medieval Dutch word which was used to mean dried plant. So, when you hear a pharmacognosist or the FDA talking about crude herbs as crude drugs, friends of mine I've seen have really bad reactions to that. I mean, how dare they put us down? They're not. I mean, well, they probably are, but the words they're using is exactly what we use: unprocessed, usually dried plant material. It's crude drugs, nothing wrong with that. There is a big difference between the practice of orthodox medicine and the practice of pharmaceutical chemistry. And everybody sees that, or should see that. They're mutually supportive but different bodies of knowledge. Because of the recent past of Western herbalism, it's not always easy to get that difference, especially in this country where there has not until recently been any easy pathway to become a clinician herbalist. There is a difference between knowing how to use plants in a human setting knowing how to formulate for the unique individual, all of that protocol development stuff, which can be done in all the different schools, different ways of doing it. But that's a vast body of wisdom and knowledge, which has very, very little to do with whether you're going to use a dry extract, whether you're going to use one make or another make, whether it's standardized, whether it's microsomal or whatever. Increasingly, the marketplace for herbalism, for herbal products, I should say, is being not taken over, but it's being rapidly co-opted to be another profit stream for the drug companies. And if it's not another profit stream for the drug companies, it's a profit stream for herb companies that would like to be the drug companies. They just are not making enough. And all the issues that come up about herb quality, which are vitally, crucially important when we're talking about herbal products, are not the issues that should be coming up when we're talking about quality protocol development or peer-reviewed clinical skill assessment. So if you've ever seen products on the shelves that say guaranteed potency, somebody say yes, you've seen those. Yeah, all right. To my English ear, guaranteed potency implies guaranteed potent outcome. It's sort of implying that this product is better than that product, and it's guaranteed that it's going to work. And that's not what they're saying at all. Within the context of natural product chemistry and FDA regulations, all of which are really essential. I'm not putting the FDA down at all here. There needs to be that level of quality control in the product field. But guaranteed potency means that one constituent, which is used as the marker molecule so that the chromatography can identify it, that's always going to be at a guaranteed level. There's no assumption at all, usually, that the marker molecule has got anything to do with the clinical efficacy. So we have products which everybody is told are better, and there's science behind them, there's all this stuff behind them. And I'm yet to see a comparative study between people using traditional tinctures or traditional teas and see if the outcome is better or worse with the guaranteed potency, standardization, whatever the new technique is. There's a basic guideline in pharmacology that if you change the route of administration of a substance or change the form of it, put it in a tablet rather than an aerosol or something, you actually change the pharmacology. And everything that's known about one form of the medicine is irrelevant. You've got to do all the testing again to see what happens with the new form. The fact that the herb industry feeds on the body of knowledge of many generations of herbal clinicians doesn't mean that what they end up making is an improvement. What it is a patentable scientific formulation. And don't for a moment think that they've improved anything unless they can prove to you that they have improved anything. And they don't, because that costs a lot of money, and I actually don't think it occurs to most of them that they actually have to show that their new structure is safer, more effective than some old herb. Another thing, have you noticed how the regulators naturally, now also large parts of the industry, bend over backwards not to say the word herb? Nutraceuticals, natural products, phytotherapy, even though I am a phytotherapist, it's as though we're not all that comfortable with who we really are. And, we're just Rhizotomoi, we're just root diggers. And not just, that's a very special gift, something to be. So, as practitioners in the Guild, I think it's really vitally important that we be a voice for holistic herbal practice, that we really make it clear in every forum possible that the people making the products do not speak for us. They're not furthering the healing work. You know, you can't patent a herb because it's a natural substance. So the main driving force behind all the new clever extraction techniques and whatever is because there's something in the process that's patentable. So you won't hear the industry promoting black cohosh. You'll hear them promoting their form of it. I've been in meetings where people from various companies have said, well, yeah, the herbalism's all very well, but how can we protect our investment? That I find an alien, obscene, disgusting thing to say when we're talking about healing. This is where my Englishness comes out. I personally see the profit motive and healing as mutually exclusive, but I'm weird like that. So, as herbalists, we should be promoting herbs and our relationship with herbs, not necessarily by default buying into having to defend some particular special formulation of St. John's wort. That's not our issue. It's their issue. Leave it alone. So, let's move on to co-option. Does science make the practice of herbal medicine better? Science definitely improves the quality of products. It definitely improves, transforms completely the understanding of mechanisms. But if I really look at what has come out in the peer-reviewed journals and what's going on amongst colleagues who are practitioners, there is hardly any real change in protocols, in traditional, well, not street herbalism, but professional traditional protocol development because of a scientific insight. The place where science becomes really useful is as a language bridge between our body of knowledge and mainstream scientific medicine's body of knowledge. Please don't think that you need to be at home with science to be a good herbal clinician. It actually tends to go the other way because the body of knowledge that you explore when you get into science has got a profound belief system behind it and a real moral, ethical force. Whether it should or shouldn't is a different issue, but it's not the herbal one. Now, there are people who can do that bridge and that marriage really well. Most of them are MDs. There are some herbalists who can do scientific medicine as well. But either way, it involves people putting profound time and attention and energy into respecting their herbalism and then being open to scientific medicine from a place of equality. We may not be doing, statistical analysis on our protocols, but know that if you're trained in Western herbalism, you have a unique body of knowledge that nothing can replace. And even though it doesn't have the same grants and same medical schools and the same structures around it as modern Western medicine, we are an equivalent. We're not an alternative, we're a complement. Herbalists are not alternatives to dentists or emergency surgeons, or obviously we should not be in competition. The fact that we often are in competition has got nothing to do with their medicine or our medicine. It's to do with personalities, and then often to do with people in positions of power who are protecting their positions of power. And if this was a talk about toxicology and statements being made about the dangers of herbs from that profession, I could give you a vast series of examples, which I will actually be doing tomorrow morning, where I won't be radical and very technical. Most of the research going on herbalism is not research into the herbalism that we do. It's research into basically organic green drug delivery systems. Ways in which the therapeutic potential of herbs can be harnessed by mainstream medicine. Now, it's really fascinating stuff if you're into that stuff. it's not an improvement on herbalism, and it rarely actually has any insights for us. The real need at the moment is not more research, it's more focused, appropriate research. There needs to be a linking up of the people with the research skills, the statisticians, the people who know how to do IRBs, all of that stuff, with herbalists who actually know how to use the herbs in the real world. There was a study 10 years ago, I think, give or take, on Dong Quai and hot flushes. It was in one of the Oakland hospitals. You might have come across the research. And they put a lot of money into it, they got good grants for it, and you know, what did they find? That Dong Quai does not get rid of hot flushes. They could have asked any herbalist and we could have told them, but they didn't. If they'd have done that on Vitex, who knows what the response would have been. And it wasn't that it was another hit piece. You know, it's easy to get a grant to prove that herbs don't work. This was just them blowing it. They thought they knew what the important herb was, and it wasn't right. I've reached a point where I actually don't believe a word of any explanation that our community comes up with. There's no reason why a herbalist should know how something works or why something works. The only thing that we can be sure we should know is, should it work? I mean, what the traditional knowledge about the outcomes. We know what combination is going to help and what isn't. Usually when people like myself in settings like this give you a mechanism, it's instant bullshit. Or it's instant bullshit with a little bit of science so you think it sounds good. We don't know.
Truly.
What we do know is how to use the herbs to get the outcome. And this is what the medical profession have got to respect. We know what to do. We might not know why we're doing it. It's only been very recently that the actual mechanisms of how aspirin works, well, they're still not totally understood. It's a drug that's been used forever. The medical profession didn't really know how it worked, but they knew it worked. So there's this, I'll leave that one.